the official Fox Sports 910 legal expert, Byron Browne, Big B of the Browne Law Group, the anti-lawyer, joining us to parse some sports and law intersections. Byron, let's start with a story that has been sort of rippling through the world of sports for a few months and has finally reached sort of an endpoint. Luke Heimlich is one of the most accomplished college baseball pitchers in the country. He has led Oregon State to a College World Series and is considered by many to be a very, very good Major League Baseball prospect. He also, at the age of 15, pled guilty to a molestation charge of his 6-year-old niece. And he's gone undrafted in 2 consecutive drafts and continues to be a person non grata amongst MLB teams and not willing to take a chance. Some people will argue he deserves a second chance. Others will argue that the seriousness of the crime that he pled guilty to at 15 should prevent him from being employed in Major League Baseball. Let me start with this, and we'll sort of present some different perspectives, and then people can obviously make their own judgments on the case. When a person pleads guilty, is it a 100% airtight proof of guilt of that crime?
No, and it happens every day where people, for a myriad of reasons, plead out into a case because, in this particular circumstance, you got a lot of factors that would lean towards that. You have a very sensitive issue that involves a family member, a very young family member, and then you got legal bills. So if you put all that together, you got a family sitting there saying, hey, listen, are we going to pay a bunch of legal bills to go to trial? And going to trial would mean that this young girl would have to testify in some aspect, meaning it would likely be private between her and the judge, but she'd still be put through it. This 15-year-old kid would be put through it. And then you're offered something where I'm sure what was said was, listen, if you plead out to this, if you write this letter and you do this, no one's ever going to hear about this ever again. You can put this behind you and your family can put it behind them and everybody can move forward. Whether he did it or not, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if that's relevant to debate it, but he did what he did and now he's going to live with the consequences. And I think the reason now it's come out, and as you and I were talking, it's such a visceral response because the allegations are not popular. No matter where you are in life, they're not popular. They're not great. But the long and short of it is, he might have just taken the deal to make it go away and move on with his life and never think that he thought he would ever hear about it again.
That's what he maintains publicly. He doesn't like talking about it, obviously, but it's been brought to his doorstep after these allegations were publicly revealed recently within the last 2 years. And what he maintains now in his 20s is that I've always maintained my innocence in this. We took legal advice, and I have never publicly acknowledged that this is something that I'm guilty of. I've always maintained my innocence. And so his defense of it is exactly what you said. I took the legal advice that was before me. Me and my family did. It was the best decision. And in fact, it should have been kept private. I mean, the goal or sort of not the promise, I'm not sure exactly the way to characterize it, but in a case like this, he was told that this would remain private and sealed, but there was a mistake of some magnitude made. You could speak to the legal magnitude of it better than I could, and it caused his case to be revealed publicly.
Yeah.
And what do you do with that at that point? I mean,
we're seeing how it plays out.
Right.
I mean, he's damned for the rest of his life because no one's ever going to risk having that individual on their team.
It's a scarlet letter.
Yeah, he's done, unfortunately. And I guarantee whether it was his lawyer, whether it was a public defender, whoever it was, I get 99.9% sure they told him he was never going to hear about this ever again in his life. And he moved forward with that. And somehow it's come out. And then, you have the mother of his niece coming out and saying that she wouldn't recommend anyone be around it. That doesn't do him any further benefit. I don't think you'll ever see him play for any MLB team.
Right.
I just don't. Now, I think it's just a healthy debate to have about in the legal system, the way that we've set it up is it's supposed to be a court of equity, meaning it's supposed to be equal and it's supposed to treat people fairly. Lady Justice is blind, and all of those axioms that we come to love and know. In this circumstance, it would be, hey, if you plead guilty and you do X and Y, you're done. Now what we're seeing is the court of public opinion is much more damning than any legal system can ever be. And he's not going to get a second chance.
Right.
There's no such thing as a second chance for this kid. He's done.
It's interesting because I'm not expecting, and I don't necessarily feel it personally myself, particular empathy for him, because there's always the possibility that he did do it. And I think that has to at least be acknowledged that through all of this, it's still entirely possible that he did commit a heinous act towards a young girl. But on the other hand, I feel like if he was told at 15 with his lawyer and his parents, hey, if you plead to this and it comes out publicly, which it probably, like if he was painted the current scenario at 15, you're going to plead guilty, it eventually is going to come out publicly.
He would have fought it.
And when it does, it will permanently stain your public reputation. Are you okay with that? It's a different conversation, right?
100%. And that's when I think he would have fought it. He would have fought it every day. And that, right there lies the rub, meaning if he would have fought it, he would have put his niece through a grueling set of circumstances, the entire family, and everybody would have been on trial. But let's say he did that, and then he was found innocent.
He was vindicated.
He probably would be drafted. I would think that he'd be drafted.
100%.
He might not be as high as they would project him. He'd still get some discoloration, so to speak, for that. But he would be, now, again, if he would have done that, and then he would have been found guilty, and then you can see right there where lies the rub is he's essentially rolling the dice, and then someone comes up to and says you, hey, if you take door number 3,
right,
no one's going to ever know that you walked through door number 3, and you can live your life and everybody's peaceful. You could see why he would take it. And again, going back to your point, whether he did it or not is, another argument, another story for another day, but you could see why a young man in his position would take door number 3.
Right. It's sort of like the two options that you discussed were both, like, as you mentioned, sort of binary. It was black or white. It was either he's guilty or he's innocent, and the fallout from both of those are pretty clearly defined. They've been mitigated through our culture for hundreds of years. There's a very clear expectation. He chose the gray, and it's a very different path, and he's experiencing it. Now, on the other hand, I feel like, and this isn't necessarily a legal issue per se, but it's like I understand why everyone's erring on the side of caution and being like, well, if there's a chance, it's probably not worth pursuing.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what's happening.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm a dog lover. Right? So, simple analogy. If I know a dog has bit somebody and I love dogs, why would I ever have them around my daughters?
Right.
There makes no sense. And it might be a crude analogy and maybe not a direct analogy, but you can see the point is if you're an MLB team or whoever, why risk it?
Right.
What's the upside? The juice isn't worth the squeeze, like it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll see what happens. As I mentioned, the Kansas City Royals, the only team to publicly express even a consideration for signing him. And if they do, what that leads to for their organization is probably not very good things for them.
Well, and then look at this from the legal standpoint. Let's say that somebody does draft him, and let's say that there's kids in the clubhouse and something happens. That team has exposed themselves to legal liability because you have knowledge of a set of circumstances, and then whether you directly place children in the room with him or not, you're going to be liable for it. Let me tell you, if someone came to my office and do it, you'd sign that client every day of the week, and I think that team would pay every day of the week. There's a lot of things that happen every single day. I mean, I don't know, but with Jameis Winston's story, there's things that I'm sure has happened, or allegations, whether it's Winston or other NFL players or whatever, where things are settled and you never hear about them again.
Right.
And so, again, why risk it? Like if you're Kansas City, why risk it?
Right.
Like I don't see the upside. Having that one player on your team isn't going to win you the World Series.
Right.
And all the negative blowback you're going to get, not even to mention about exposing yourself to some legal liability potentially, I just don't see it's ever worth it.
Yeah, it's a great, as you mentioned, it's sort of a healthy debate about the legal system and public reaction and all wrapped up into what is sort of a sordid story in the first place, but interesting nonetheless. Yep. Byron Browne is our official Fox Sports 910 legal expert, BrowneLawGroup.com. You can follow him on social media. Byron, always appreciate your insight, man.
Thanks, Jody.